Fast fact. According to the Financial Educators Council, Americans lost over $1,506 in 2023 due to financial illiteracy, losing money to fraud, overspending, and unnecessary fees. I'm Drew Thomas, and you're listening to Bank Chats. So on today's episode of Bank Chats, I always say today's episode, but quite frankly, you could be listening at night or in the morning, or maybe, I don't know, wherever you happen to be. But I am, of course, your host, Drew Thomas. With me is my producer, Jeff McTavish, and co-host and 2 Cents partner. And I don't know, you wear so many hats, Jeff. I don't know.
Hey, Drew.
I wear one hat. He wears like 7. So we're going to talk a little bit today about financial literacy. And really, the whole point of the podcast really is financial education and financial literacy, right? We want to try to provide everybody that's listening to the show some general information and education about banking and financial health, right? That's the whole point of Bank Chats. Yeah. And we at Ameriserve, we actually have a fantastic partner that we have worked with now for, I think it's been about 2 years or so.
Yeah.
And it is Bonsai Incorporated. They do a fantastic job of working not only with online education, so there's articles and coaching sessions and things like that on the web, but also with school districts teaching children and doing financial education through Scholastic and teaching and so forth. So they're a really fantastic company. And with that in mind, our guest today is from Bonsai. Her name is Emma King. Hi, Emma. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Happy to be here.
We're doing fantastic, and it's a very hot day here. I gotta tell you, it's like in the 90s, and that is really unusual for us. I don't know what it's like where you are, but
I'm in Utah, and we're having some freak windstorms right now, so it's a little weird. I wish it was warmer. I'm from Texas, so I'm ready for like 100 degrees, but here I am.
Yeah, 100 degrees around here. We're from Pennsylvania, so 100 degrees here is like living in a swamp.
Yeah, we'll switch you. Yeah.
Oh, that's fair. It's humid, huh?
Yeah, it's very humid. 100 degrees and 15% humidity, I'll take over even 90 degrees and 60% humidity. It's terrible. It's terrible.
That's fair. Humidity is not a good match with anything.
So anyway, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got working with Bonsai and what it is that you do.
Yeah, of course. So I've been with Bonsai for about 2 years now at the time of the airing of this, depending when you're watching it. It might vary. Maybe it'll be 10 years at this point. It's actually kind of crazy how I ended up here. I was in the medical field before I came over to Bonsai. And I was just looking around, and I ran into Bonsai, looked up its mission, which is sharing financial literacy. We want to make financial resources or tools accessible to everyone. Whether you're 8 years old or you're 80 years old, there's something to learn. And so I heard the mission and I just related to it. I think financial literacy is something that's so easy to be passionate about because it affects every single one of us, in one way or another. So I started here and I've loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I make the joke often, it's one of my staples, that, people go through high school and they take calculus, and there's like 1 out of 100 people that go on after high school to use calculus, but nobody teaches financial literacy. Mm-hmm. And everybody has to learn how to budget, right? So the focus is sometimes a little off.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I remember in high school, we watched financial literacy just videos, and we would like take notes on what we learned. And I learned some great stuff, but I can't say too much of it stuck.
You had more exposure than we did, yeah.
That's true. I was doing some reading here prior to us having this discussion, and I was reading that data from 2024 index, this is according to the World Economic Forum, financial literacy in the United States has hovered around 50% for the last 8 consecutive years, and a 2% drop in the last 2 years. So right now, statistically, less than half of the country is what would be considered financially literate. Does that sound about right to you based on what you guys see at Bonsai?
Yeah, I'd say that's beyond right. It's insane, the number of people, myself included for a while, that didn't even know how to open a credit card, how credit works, how these simple things that affect your everyday life, affect you. And so we really just want to make resources free, and, partnering with Ameriserve, you have it right there on your website. Like, just go check it out, go learn. We want people to be able to know, these things that are going to affect their life.
Absolutely. So how would you define financial literacy? I think that maybe that's kind of a broad term that gets sort of thrown around, but how would you define being financially literate? Does that mean knowing the difference between a 20 and a 10, or is there more to it than that?
No, that's a great question. I think it involves, a few things. It's having skills, it's having knowledge on financial topics, understanding what a budget is or what investing is. And it's hard to say that anyone's financially literate because there's always more to learn, and things are changing. A budget 20 years ago wouldn't work today. So we've got to adapt. So I feel like financial literacy is just learning about these topics and making informed decisions based on that.
So Bonsai has a number of different ways that you guys go about doing that. So let's talk a little bit, since we already sort of touched on the subject of not getting educated in schools whenever we were younger. Let's talk a little bit about the scholastic aspect of Bonsai. How does that work? You work with teachers, right? You work with school districts?
Yeah. The school aspect is really cool because teachers are able to go to bonsai.org. They can decide, okay, I want to offer these courses to my students. And the courses are gamified versions of life, where students can be running a lemonade stand, saving, money to buy a hoverboard or a bike, or it can be they're saving up for college, learning soft skills. There's a wide range, but the teachers go in and decide, okay, I want to offer this. I want to give this to my students, something that maybe they didn't have. And I think another big thing is state standards are changing. It's becoming more necessary in every state. I don't remember where it's at in Pennsylvania right now, but I'm sure, it's becoming more necessary there.
Yeah, absolutely. In the state of Pennsylvania, right now there's a recommendation to offer financial literacy in our school districts, but I believe that starting in the 2026 school year, it's going to be mandatory that there be a dedicated financial education part of the curriculum, not just something that you throw in at the last minute on day 179 out of 180.
It's funny. That's when we saw a lot of peak in Bonsai. And the test was the end of the year because teachers are like, oh yeah, that's really good stuff. Let me put that in there.
And I'm out of a lesson plan. So you know what? It's really...
That's filler, yeah. No.
They're like, here, do this game.
I do like the idea that it's gamified, though. I think that's
Very interactive, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. I went through when I started at Bonsai, and even we have one for elementary age. It was so fun running the lemonade stand. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that that's the definition, of whatever word it was.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, it's good to relearn these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff and I were out and about last week at an event, and we saw, you said you saw 2 lemonade stands,
Yeah.
like out in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know kids are still doing that, which is great. But yeah, I mean,
times have changed. They're not taking cash anymore. They're taking Venmo. Or That's
peer-to-peer payments
in my neighborhood. And the girl was selling her cup with the lemonade. And so you're mainly paying for a cup. And it's like, oh, well, that's kind of a new take on lemonade stands.
I like the idea that not only are you learning about financial literacy in a way, you're learning how to make change and do the basics like when you're a kid like that, but you're also learning sales.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You're learning how to sell yourself
People
and how
skills,
to be,
yeah.
how to be confident. And I think that's a big part of financial literacy too, is I think a lot of people are, and it's really in some ways no fault of their own or little fault of their own that they're not quote unquote financially literate, but they feel embarrassed to admit that. And so they don't seek out ways to try to learn.
Mhm.
And I think that that's another reason why the other aspect of Bonsai, which is the online component, being able to do self-paced education, read articles, do coaching sessions, I think that's also really nice because you can do it in the privacy of your own home. Nobody has to know that you're doing it. You don't have to, walk into a classroom somewhere and admit that you don't know how to do the interest rate on your account or something like that.
Mhm.
So talk a little bit, Emma, about that aspect. When did Bonsai start offering the online component of the financial literacy?
Yeah, we started with schools back in, I think it was '07. And so we were just mainly focused on offering it to students, people that are just barely getting into finances. But I want to say about 5 years back, we started this community wellness because we realized, the students need it, the youth need it, but us adults, we're planning for retirement. We need to learn these topics as well. And so we came out with, like you said, a plethora of resources. We have articles that range from NFTs and cryptocurrency to the basics of budgeting. One of my favorite resources is actually our coaching sessions, which I think you'd mentioned. And that's just because it allows users to go in and say, this is where I'm at. And the coaching session will give you some recommendations. Let's say you're doing the budgeting coach. It'll say, hey, based off of what you've told me, here are some recommendations that might help you. Or here's your graph of your budget. And with the Bonsai resources, we never try to tell you, this is exactly what you have to do, because everyone's going to be a little different. We just try to give those resources for you to make the best decision for yourself, to have all this knowledge.
Right. Hey, Emma, so in these courses and in these coaching sessions, what are some of the more popular topics that students are learning about with your platform?
Yeah, no, great question. I'd say the most popular ones are probably the budgeting ones, because that's, a great place to get started for anyone is learning how to budget. Another really popular thing right now is digital wellness, how to be safe online. Right now, there are a lot of scams going around that you've got to be safe about. And so we have tons of articles and coaching sessions on that.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that, too, we're starting to become less and less of a cash-based society. So much of this stuff is done electronically. You make your payments to your bills electronically. You get direct deposit into your account. There are times when you'd never have to touch a dollar bill for an entire month if you didn't want to, because you could pay with a debit card or a credit card. So, knowing how those things work and how to use them safely has to be a key component as well, I would think.
Exactly. And cash, for me personally, cash is dangerous. I'm a victim of girl math, and I'm like, cash is free. I can't mess with cash.
We're opposite then. I'm only cash.
Yeah.
It works. I love that. That's what's so cool about it. But for me, I just feel like, man, I have thousands of dollars that I can go spend on whatever.
It's already out of my account. I can spend whatever.
It's so bad. My husband hates it.
So I guess one of the things that is important to note, too, about this is that financial literacy is not just about saying that I guess the point of being financial literate is it has real life impact on you. Right? If you don't understand how to create a budget, you could end up in bankruptcy, which really affects your life. It could affect your housing. It could affect your ability to buy a car. It can sometimes even affect your ability to get hired from certain organizations. I know that as a bank, like we do credit checks, right? Because we want to make sure that people are financially stable before we put them around a bunch of cash, right? that doesn't belong to them, right? So I think that Bonsai is performing a fantastic service, not only just because financial literacy itself is an important thing, but it has real life impact on people, right?
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, there are so many things that I had no idea about, until recently. We were buying a house and we had to know our DTI, our debt to income ratio. And I was like, I had no idea that these things impacted, how much money I make and whether I have a car loan, whether I have a house loan. You just think I have money in the bank. Okay, I can do whatever I want. But it doesn't work that way. There's so many different aspects. And so we really just try to provide all of that information so you can know, okay, what is DTI? For all of those out there that don't know, I highly recommend looking into it. but going and just knowing to prepare for your future and for your children's future. I mean, there are a lot of things you can do now to help your kids out.
And I guess that leads into another question that Jeff and I were talking about ahead of time, right? Because you were asking about what age.
Yeah. What's a common age for a student to start learning about financial literacy through your platform? Is it set up for like middle school students or high school students? Is there something for both age groups?
Yeah, we have something for all age groups, starting in elementary. I'd say kindergarten and first grade, it's not too popular yet. They're still learning basic math. They're not quite ready to run the lemonade stand. But the most popular age group I'd probably say is high school, just because it's getting real for them. They're about to go to college, preparing for opening their first credit cards. But, we also want to cater to the elementary age where they're just opening their first checking account, because that's going to set you up for your life and your future too.
And I'm sure the parents are benefiting too. I'm sure they're, these students are going home and telling their parents what they learned today. So that's a plus.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the big reasons we came out with the Community Wellness Center, is because the kids were going home and saying, hey, I went through this course, I learned these amazing topics. And the parents want to learn too. They want to learn for themselves, as well as to know, what is my child learning? What do they know?
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And even whenever you said you see probably your largest dedicated group being high school students, I think that high school students, they sometimes are put in a position, especially with things like college loans, their first credit cards, their first car loan, maybe things like that, where they are, I don't want to say blindly, but they're naive to how much money they're actually borrowing, and they're naive to how much that's going to impact their life to pay it back in the long term. And so I think understanding that more, particularly with a generation now that is almost expected to go to college, and almost expected to go to college in a time when college is the most expensive it has ever been, I think that understanding how that financially impacts them is important.
Yeah, and we have resources on getting scholarships. You mentioned it's the most expensive. And so we've got to learn, it might be the most expensive, but how can I work with that? With what I'm given, maybe filling out FAFSA, is the best bet. Getting scholarships. There are so many ways to make it more accessible and to set yourself up or your child up for their future.
Absolutely. So whenever it comes to the coaching sessions that Bonsai has, is that sort of like the lemonade stand for adults? Is that a fair comparison, or are they different?
I love that analogy. I'm going to start using that. The coaching sessions, unfortunately, I wish they were as fun as the courses. The lemonade stand, it's a picture, that pops up and you running your lemonade stand. The coaches are more so it's similar to AI, I would say, where you go in and you're chatting with somebody.
Okay.
So you go in and it'll say, hey, I'm going to start with the financial wellness one because it's my favorite. And this is one that any listeners out there, go check out the financial wellness assessment. But you get started and it'll say, hey, let's know your strengths and weaknesses and take a step towards your financial wellness. And so it'll ask you questions like, how old are you? Are you married? Do you have any kids? Do you have any debt? Maybe you have credit debt or college debt. What's your credit score? It'll take all of this information in. And then at the end, you can download a sheet that'll say hey, you're doing good here, but maybe we can improve a bit on your credit score. Or let's pay down your debts a little bit just by paying $10 more, a month. You can pay it down faster. And then it'll refer you to some articles that are based on, what you put in there. So if you had a low credit score, it'll say, hey, here's an article on improving that. So it's very much a conversation with, Bonsai or with the coach.
That totally makes sense to me. I think that's a fantastic, and we can put a link directly to that even in the description of the show, so that people can get right to that one, and then they can find other stuff there too. We'll put the links down there. We always tell people don't click on links, but you can click on these. That's fine.
You can trust these links, we promise.
If they're in the episode description, you're pretty much good. For the most part, I would think. Although, you know what, that'll be the next thing somebody hacks, is being able to like mess with an episode description of a podcast and start like
don't say that.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, don't. Yeah, please don't do that. Seriously.
Hackers listening right now.
Right, we're gonna be listened to by the one person that's like, that's a fantastic idea, and then it's gonna be my fault.
He's like, consider it done.
Yeah, really. So, in your experience, you said you've been with Bonsai how long? You said about
2 years. Yeah.
2 years. I'm sorry. So in that time, have you heard any sort of stories or any gotten any feedback from either a school or a teacher or maybe a partner that you've worked with that has resonated with you as like something that you know where Bonsai really helped somebody to identify an issue and maybe get better at it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I actually recently have been taking on a project where I'm working with teachers directly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been reaching out to teachers and asking them, you know, how has Bonsai helped you? You know, how has this actually impacted your students? And the feedback has just been, you know, phenomenal. Hearing that they, you know, are able to go through, you know, we've been focusing on the lemonade stand, so we'll take it there. You know, they'll go through it with their students and they'll say, hey, like as a class, what decision should we make? And so it's just very memorable. You know, I love when teachers are able to make it not just, hey, you know, do this, good luck.
Right.
But it's interactive, you know, and I think that's something that's so huge about these topics is making it fun, interactive, and not just, okay, this is something to get done.
I would agree with you. I think that, and that's why I said earlier I said I really appreciate the gamified aspects of this because, you know, anymore people are I swear they are born with a smartphone or a tablet in their hand. I mean, they're constantly looking at screens. Gamified stuff is everywhere, and so it captures your attention, I think, more than just watching a video or listening to. We've all done those sort of virtual training sessions where you just listen to a video for 45 minutes and then you're given a quiz.
And attention spans are lower than they ever been. You know,
they have to be. Yeah. I mean, you know, we even know that from a marketing perspective. I mean, you know, if you don't catch somebody in the first 2 or 3 seconds, they're gone because there's something else that they could go focus on. So being able to hold a student's attention is very important, and relating it to something also makes it stick in their mind, I think, better.
Yeah, no, that's so huge. We actually just came out with a new game where the students are buying a new pair of headphones. And so in the game, they're going through and they go to their mom and asking for money, you know, which all of us did. And we ask for $300 and your mom says, no, you know, not yet. I'm not going to give you $300. I wish. And so in this game, they're able to go through and, you know, they control the budget. Mm-hmm. And so every week, if you save $50 in the grocery budget, you know, you're able to take that home with you and you're able to save that towards your headphones. And so it's a cool way to make it applicable to youth's life of, hey, I also want the new Apple AirPods, you know, here's how you can get there. And so it's some cool ideas as well, which not to say it'll work with everyone's parents, but it's some options.
I do like the fact that you're teaching them to save the money for the thing and not just throw it on a credit card, get the thing and pay it later.
Yeah.
I think that is something that has been lost on people, I think, a lot compared to, say, my grandfather or grandmother's generation where, you know, they had the coffee can and they'd put a few dollars in it. And, you know, eventually, you know, over time they would say, okay, well, we've saved up enough and we're going to go buy our new couch or we're going to go buy our TV. Where now we're just so accustomed to throwing it on a credit card and paying high interest. And, you know, there's something a little more satisfying, I think, about saving up that money ahead of time and then buying it outright. It's yours. You don't have a bill. You can just enjoy it. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, there are so many things nowadays where you can pay something off over a few months, which I think is awesome, but it's so hard not to get in the habit of, you know, everything you buy, just putting it on credit or paying it off over time. And I think that's where a lot of us do get trapped is because we can pay it off later. But learning to budget, going back to those basics is how we're going to be able to control that and set ourselves up and get those headphones, straight forward. Just buy them.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, Emma, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us about all of this and to tell us a little bit about Bonsai and how it has impacted people, not only from the students, but also the teachers and the adults, quite honestly, that are using it. And just being able to understand that, we have, how many articles are there now?
Oh, between articles and coaches, calculators, over 200.
Yeah. There's something for everybody out there, Yeah. And that's a credit to you and your and Bonsai's team of people that have come up with that. That's a lot of article writing.
Yeah, and they let us share it with whoever on our website. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Emma, congratulations on moving from the medical field to this. You're still helping people.
Yep. It's a good fit for you.
I loved about it is I was like, life is going to be not satisfying if I'm not in the medical field. But coming here, I was like, oh, life still can be satisfying. What we're putting out there really does help. We've reached millions of people at this point, and it's awesome hearing the feedback. If anyone has anything they'd like to say or an article they want, please let us know. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can also pass that along as well. Like in the episode description, you can find links to you can either send us a text message, give us some feedback through the link in the description for text message feedback. There's also a link in the description for sending us feedback through the website. We always appreciate feedback on the show and on our the things that we can pass along to our guests, our experts on the show as well. If you haven't subscribed to the show yet, why not? Seriously, we're awesome.
Honestly.
You should do that. Emma's going to subscribe, right?
Yeah, of course. Double thumbs up.
Absolutely.
If I could.
Yeah, see, we just put her on the spot right there. She couldn't say no. Emma, thank you so much.
Safe links, everyone.
That's right.
Yes. Safe links.
All right. Well, with that, Jeff, I think I will turn the show over to your capable editing hands.
Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you so much again, Emma.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Emma. Bye.
This podcast focuses on having valuable conversations on various topics related to banking and financial health. The podcast is grounded in having open conversations with professionals and experts with the goal of helping to take some of the mystery out of financial and related topics, as learning about financial products and services can help you make more informed financial decisions. Please keep in mind that the information contained within this podcast and any resources available for download from our website or other resources relating to Bank Chats is not intended and should not be understood or interpreted to be financial advice. The host, guests, and production staff of Bank Chats expressly recommend that you seek advice from a trusted financial professional before making financial decisions. The host of Bank Chats is not an attorney, accountant, or financial advisor, and the program is simply intended as one source of information. The podcast is not a substitute for a financial professional who is aware of the facts and circumstances of your individual situation. Being financially literate really just means knowing how to navigate the financial landscape, setting budgets, managing bank accounts, understanding the pros and cons of taking on debt, and planning for the future. The more you know, the better you can handle life's financial challenges. When only 64% of Americans can pass a basic financial literacy quiz, that's not an ideal situation for our society. We'd like to thank Emma King from Bonsai for joining us today to talk about how they help make raising that percentage easier. You can find Bonsai-created coaching sessions, articles, and calculators at Ameriserve.com. As always, my thanks to our producer and sometimes co-host, Jeff McTavish, for his hard work and contributions to the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. Ameriserve Presents Bank Chats is produced and distributed by Ameriserve Financial Incorporated. Music by Rattlesnake Milo and Andrea Kalitkin. You can find all of our episodes at ameriserve.com/bankchats or by searching for us on your favorite podcast app. For now, I'm Drew Thomas. So long.